Time is wild, right? Sometimes a single moment, a tick of the clock, can change everything. Imagine the world shifting in just 15 minutes. Think about it. One phone call, one decision, or one spark can flip the script of history. In 15 minutes, a city can fall, a record can be broken, or a new idea can ignite a revolution. Today, I'm diving into 4 times when just 15 minutes rewrote what we thought was possible. Get ready. These stories prove that a quarter of an hour can change the world. But to understand just how powerful 15 minutes can be, let's go back to a time when the world was at war with infection and losing. The early 20th century was a dangerous time to fall ill. A simple cut could turn deadly. Pneumonia, meningitis, blood poisoning, all were near certain killers. Millions died each year, not because doctors lacked knowledge, but because they lacked a weapon. Humanity was at war with infection and losing. But in September 1928, in a small London laboratory, 15 minutes of observation would change everything. An accident, a forgotten dish, and the spark that saved hundreds of millions of lives. This is the story of penicillin. Alexander Fleming was not a man known for neatness. His laboratory was famously chaotic. With dishes stacked high, bacteria cultures spread everywhere. To some, it looked like disarray. To Fleming, it was potential. In the late summer of 1928, Fleming had been studying Staphylococcus, a bacterium responsible for boils, sore throats, and deadly infections. He grew colonies in petri dishes, feeding them, studying their behavior. When Fleming returned in September, something unusual caught his eye. On one dish, a strange growth. Around it, the colonies of deadly Staphylococcus bacteria had vanished. It was as if something invisible had killed them. Fleming leaned closer. The intruder was a mold, Penicillium notatum, ordinary, common, yet here it had performed the extraordinary. Where the mold grew, bacteria died. The rest of the dish was teeming with life, but near the mold, nothing. This was no coincidence. Fleming knew immediately. The mold secreted a substance that attacked bacteria, leaving human tissue unharmed. A selective assassin. A miracle. But miracles are fragile. Fleming had made the observation. The world, however, wasn't ready to listen. Fleming published his findings in 1929. He named the substance penicillin, but the scientific world barely noticed. Producing it was too difficult. The compound was unstable, weak. To many it was just another curiosity, destined to fade into the shadows of forgotten experiments. For a decade, penicillin sat in obscurity. Fleming himself admitted, "It looked like a promising beginning, but I couldn't go much further." And so, as the 1930s turned into the 1940s, infections continued their deadly march. Wars loomed. Soldiers died not only from bullets, but from wounds that festered. The cure was known, yet almost lost. Then, in 1939, at Oxford University, a team led by Howard Florey and Ernst Chain stumbled upon Fleming's forgotten paper. They asked the question no one had pursued. Could penicillin be purified and mass-produced? The experiments began. Mice injected with deadly bacteria were given penicillin. Hours passed. The untreated mice died. The treated ones lived. The timing was critical. The world was at war. Infections threatened to kill more soldiers than enemy fire. If penicillin worked, it could save millions. With support from the US and British governments, penicillin entered mass production. By D-Day in 1944, Allied soldiers carried not only weapons, but tiny vials of hope. Wounds that would have killed were now healed. Infections that doomed patients were suddenly curable. The mold from a single petri dish had become humanity's shield. Life expectancy soared. Deadly diseases were pushed back. The age of antibiotics had begun. All of it. The survival of millions, the transformation of medicine, traced back to a single moment of chance. A forgotten dish. A mold that killed bacteria. And a curious man who stopped, looked, and asked, "What happened here?" 15 minutes of observation that changed the world forever. The story of Apollo 11 begins in the shadow of the Cold War. The world was divided, East versus West, democracy versus communism. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy stood before Congress and declared a bold challenge: to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth before the decade was out. The stakes were enormous. The Soviet Union had already shocked the world with Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin. The United States was determined to catch up, and to win. As the 1960s unfolded, the space race became a global obsession. Soviet rockets thundered skyward. American engineers worked around the clock. Every launch was a high-stakes gamble, broadcast live to millions. The world watched, breath held, as the two superpowers vied for the ultimate prize. NASA assembled a team of the best and the bravest. Neil Armstrong, a calm and precise test pilot. Buzz Aldrin, a brilliant engineer and astronaut. Michael Collins, the steady command module pilot. Their training was relentless. Simulators, underwater drills, zero-gravity flights, and endless hours of preparation. They became brothers, united by a mission that would test the limits of human courage and ingenuity. July 16, 1969. At Kennedy Space Center, the mighty Saturn V rocket stood poised, taller than a 36-story building, weighing over 6 million pounds. Hundreds of thousands gathered on the Florida coast. Around the world, televisions flickered to life. The countdown began. Ignition. The ground shook as the Saturn V roared to life, flames and thunder lighting up the dawn. The rocket climbed, stage after stage falling away, carrying 3 men toward the unknown. In living rooms and public squares, people cheered, wept, and prayed. For 3 days, Apollo 11 crossed the vastness of space. Earth shrank to a blue marble. The moon grew larger, its surface stark and mysterious. Inside the spacecraft, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins floated in zero gravity, checking systems, sharing jokes, and gazing out at the infinite. On July 20th, the lunar module Eagle separated from the command module. Armstrong and Aldrin began their descent. In mission control, tension was electric. Engineers hunched over consoles, sweat on brows, every heartbeat echoing in the silence. Suddenly, alarms blared, computer overloads. The landing site was strewn with boulders. Armstrong took manual control, guiding Eagle over the hazards, searching for a safe spot. Seconds ticked away. Fuel ran low. Armstrong's voice crackled over the radio. Forward, forward, drifting to the right a little. With just 17 seconds of fuel left, the Eagle touched down. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Cheers erupted in mission control. Around the globe, millions celebrated. Humanity had done the impossible. Hours later, Armstrong descended the ladder. He paused, then stepped onto the lunar surface. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Aldrin joined him, describing the landscape as magnificent desolation. Together, they planted the American flag, collected samples, and spoke to the world in a live broadcast watched by over 600 million people. On Earth, people crowded around televisions and radios, from city squares to remote villages. Strangers hugged, tears flowed, and headlines flashed, "Man walks on moon." For a moment, the world was united in awe. After 21 hours on the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin returned to Eagle. The ascent module blasted off, rejoining Collins in lunar orbit. The journey home began, 3 men forever changed, carrying lunar dust and dreams. The return to Earth was no less dramatic. The command module hurtled through the atmosphere, heat shield blazing, parachutes billowing open. With a splash, Apollo 11 landed in the Pacific. Recovery ships raced to greet the heroes. The world erupted in celebration. Parades, headlines, and songs marked the return. The Apollo 11 crew became legends, symbols of what humanity could achieve when united by vision and courage. In just 15 minutes, we went from earthbound to standing on another world. The Apollo 11 landing wasn't just a technological triumph. It was a leap for all humankind. A moment that proved what's possible when we dare to dream big. Its legacy lives on in science, technology, and the imagination of generations. Berlin before the wall, families strolled through bustling streets, children played in parks, and trams rattled past grand old buildings. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. The city was a fault line between East and West, freedom and oppression. In August 1961, everything changed. Barbed wire snaked through neighborhoods overnight. Soldiers hammered concrete slabs into place, splitting the city in two. Families woke to find themselves on opposite sides, cut off by a wall that would soon stretch for miles. For nearly 3 decades, the Berlin Wall was more than concrete and barbed wire. It was a scar across the heart of Europe. Armed guards patrolled its length. Watchtowers loomed. On the western side, life bustled with color and music. On the east, daily routines unfolded under watchful eyes. Families were torn apart. Some waved to loved ones across the divide, unable to touch or speak. Others risked everything, digging tunnels, leaping from windows, or braving barbed wire. In desperate bids for freedom, many paid with their lives. The wall became a symbol of oppression, of the Cold War, of a world divided. But hope was not lost. In the 1980s, winds of change swept through Eastern Europe. Protests grew. Candlelight vigils lit up the night. People demanded freedom, chanting for a future without walls. Then, on November 9, 1989, the world held its breath. At a chaotic press conference, a government spokesman stumbled over his words. As far as I know, effective immediately, the news flashed across the city. East Germans could cross the border. Confusion reigned. Crowds surged to the checkpoints, demanding to cross. Guards, unsure and overwhelmed, hesitated, then stepped aside. In that instant, the wall's power crumbled. People climbed the wall, embraced and wept. Strangers became family. Hammers and chisels chipped away at the concrete. The world watched as Berliners danced atop the wall, celebrating freedom and unity. In just 15 minutes, a city and the world transformed. The wall fell, not just as concrete, but as a symbol. The impossible had happened. The world cheered and hope surged across continents. Today, fragments of the wall stand as memorials. Berlin is a city reunited, alive with hope. The fall of the Berlin Wall changed Europe forever, and proved that even the mightiest barriers can fall when people dare to dream of freedom. Before the Human Genome Project, scientists spent decades decoding the mysteries of DNA. From Watson and Crick's double helix discovery in 1953 to the first gene being mapped, each breakthrough brought us closer to understanding life's blueprint. But mapping the entire human genome was a challenge like no other. Billions of DNA letters, massive computers, and a race against time. Scientists from the US, UK, Japan, France, Germany, and China joined forces, turning competition into collaboration. Key figures like Francis Collins and Craig Venter led teams through setbacks and breakthroughs. Late nights, failed experiments, and moments of doubt were all part of the journey. Finally, on June 26, 2000, the world watched as President Clinton and scientists announced the first draft of the human genome. In just 15 minutes, history was made. Suddenly, the entire blueprint of human life was revealed. Animated graphics showed the twisting double helix, while headlines flashed around the globe. The potential for medicine, genetics, and understanding ourselves was completely transformed. The legacy? New treatments for genetic diseases, personalized medicine, and hope for cures once thought impossible. The Human Genome Project didn't just change science, it changed what it means to be human. It was a seemingly ordinary morning in 1928, when Alexander Fleming returned to his cluttered laboratory. Among his forgotten petri dishes, he noticed something extraordinary. A mold had killed the surrounding bacteria. In just 15 minutes of careful observation, Fleming realized he'd stumbled upon a world-changing discovery: penicillin. What began as an accident soon became the first true antibiotic, ushering in a new era of medicine. Countless lives have been saved. Diseases once considered deadly became treatable, all because of an unexpected moment and a curious mind. The story of penicillin reminds us that the next breakthrough might come from the unlikeliest of places, and that history can turn on what we do with just a few minutes of insight. So, stay curious. Your accidental miracle could be next. From the moon landing to the fall of the Berlin Wall to unlocking the code of life, each story shows us that in just 15 minutes, the world can shift forever. The next world-changing 15 minutes could happen anywhere, maybe in a lab, on a street, or even in your own life. Progress is built on moments when someone dares to act. So, when your moment comes, will you be ready? Because sometimes, all it takes is 15 minutes to change your world, and maybe the world itself.